It all started on a crisp autumn morning, the kind where the golden sunlight filters through the trees and everything feels calm and perfect. My Aunt Lucy had come to stay with us for a while, and I was excited. She was always full of life, with her witty humor and an energy that could light up a room. But that morning, something about her seemed off. She was unusually quiet, her gaze distant, almost as if she were lost in her own thoughts. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe she just needed some fresh air. Our family horse, Bella, was grazing peacefully in the paddock. Bella wasn't just any horse. She was special. We'd had her for years, and she was more than a pet. She was part of the family. Everyone loved her, especially me. I'd spent countless hours brushing her mane, feeding her treats, and riding her across the open fields. Bella had a way of calming you down, like she understood your emotions without needing any words. That morning, Aunt Lucy announced she wanted to spend time with Bella. "I've always loved horses," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile that made you second guess if everything was really okay. Still, I didn't think much of it. Why wouldn't she want to spend time with Bella? She grabbed a few apples from the kitchen, said she'd be back soon, and walked out toward the paddock. A few minutes later, I heard Bella's frantic whinny echo through the air. My heart dropped. That wasn't her usual sound. It was panicked, almost desperate. I sprinted toward the paddock, my chest tightening with each step. As I rounded the corner, I froze, my stomach twisting in disbelief. Aunt Lucy was there, but what she was doing to Bella was something I never could have imagined. In that moment, I realized something was seriously wrong. Whatever Aunt Lucy's intentions were, they weren't what I'd expected, and they were about to change everything. I stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Aunt Lucy was crouched beside Bella, whispering something under her breath, her movements quick and deliberate. Bella, usually so calm and trusting, was shifting uneasily, her eyes wide with fear. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to figure out what Aunt Lucy was doing. "Lucy," I called out, my voice shaky but loud enough to grab her attention. She flinched, her head snapping toward me like she'd been caught red-handed. For a moment, she just stared, her expression a mix of surprise and something else, something I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt, fear, anger? Whatever it was, it sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, you startled me," she said, standing up and brushing dirt off her hands. Her voice was calm, too calm, like she was trying hard to act normal. Bella and I were just getting to know each other better. She gave me a smile, but it didn't feel right. It didn't match the tension in the air or the way Bella was acting. I took a step closer, my eyes flicking between her and Bella. The apples she'd brought were scattered on the ground, but they didn't look touched. Instead, there was something else, a faint, odd smell in the air, like a chemical or medicine. My stomach churned as questions raced through my mind. What was she doing out here, and why did Bella seem so spooked? Before I could ask, Aunt Lucy reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're overthinking, sweetheart," she said softly, her tone almost soothing. "I'd never hurt Bella. You know that, don't you?" But the uneasiness in her eyes told a different story, and deep down I knew I couldn't let it go. Something wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that Aunt Lucy wasn't being honest with me. Bella's reaction alone was enough to keep me on edge. She wasn't the kind of horse to get scared easily, and yet, even after Aunt Lucy left the paddock, Bella stayed skittish, pacing and tossing her head like she couldn't calm down. I decided to stay with her for a while, running my hands along her neck and whispering softly until her breathing steadied. But the uneasy feeling in my chest only grew stronger. Later that evening, I noticed Aunt Lucy acting strange again. She was quieter than usual, her eyes darting around the room whenever anyone tried to talk to her. She even skipped dinner, saying she wasn't feeling well. My parents didn't seem to think much of it. They were just happy to have her staying with us for a while. But I couldn't let it go. Something about her wasn't adding up, and I needed to figure out what it was. The next morning, I woke up early and headed straight to the paddock to check on Bella. She seemed calmer now, munching on hay as if nothing had happened. Still, I looked her over carefully, searching for any signs that something might be wrong. That's when I noticed it. A small puncture mark on her neck, almost hidden beneath her mane. My heart sank. It didn't look like an insect bite. It was too precise, too deliberate. I couldn't stop the questions flooding my mind. Had Aunt Lucy done this? And if so, why? What could she possibly want with Bella? My instincts told me to confront her, but I knew I needed proof first. If I accused her without any evidence, no one would believe me. That evening, I decided to keep a closer eye on Aunt Lucy. I watched as she wandered into the barn just before sunset, carrying a small bag she hadn't had before. My curiosity got the better of me, and I waited until she disappeared inside before sneaking closer. Peering through a crack in the barn door, I saw her pull out a vial and a syringe. My blood ran cold. What was she doing? And what did she want with Bella? My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of it all. But one thing was clear. I had to find out before it was too late. I could hardly breathe as I watched Aunt Lucy through the crack in the barn door, her movements slow and deliberate. She was focused on Bella, who was now tied to the post in the corner, seemingly unaware of what was about to happen. I held my breath, praying she wouldn't notice me lurking in the shadows. I knew I couldn't keep watching for much longer. I needed to act, but fear kept me frozen in place. Aunt Lucy set the syringe down carefully, her hands shaking slightly as she fidgeted with the vial. The light from the barn's lone bulb flickered, casting long, eerie shadows across the floor. The atmosphere felt charged, thick with tension, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. She didn't seem like the Aunt Lucy I knew, kind, funny, loving. This woman was cold, methodical, like she had some dark purpose in mind. The needle gleamed under the dim light as she filled it with something, her face tight with concentration. My heart raced. What was in that vial? Was it a tranquilizer? A poison? Whatever it was, it couldn't be good. My mind screamed at me to do something, anything, but I didn't know what. I couldn't let her harm Bella, but I was too far away to stop her without risking everything. I made up my mind in an instant. I couldn't wait any longer. I darted away from the barn door and ran for the house. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so much I almost dropped it. I dialed my parents' number, but my voice cracked as I tried to explain. Mom, Dad, something's wrong with Aunt Lucy. She's doing something to Bella in the barn. I don't know what it is, but you have to come quick. The line went dead for a second, then my mom's frantic voice came through. What are you talking about? What's happening to Bella? I don't know, but she's in the barn and she's got a needle. Please, hurry. I hung up, my pulse thumping in my ears. I couldn't wait for them to arrive. I had to stop her now. I grabbed a nearby shovel and cautiously approached the barn again, praying I wouldn't be seen. The fear in my chest was overwhelming, but I pushed it down, focusing all my energy on stopping whatever Lucy had planned. As I crept closer, I heard Bella whinny in distress, the sound echoing through the barn. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. I had to make my move before it was too late. I took a deep breath, clutching the shovel tightly as I approached the barn, each step slow and calculated. The sounds of Bella's anxious whinnies grew louder, more frantic, and my heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't hear Aunt Lucy anymore, and that made everything worse. The silence was too thick, too heavy. Was she still in there? Or had she noticed me? I crept around the side of the barn, staying in the shadows, hoping I wasn't too late. As I peeked around the corner, I froze. There, standing near the barn door, was Aunt Lucy, but she wasn't alone. My stomach dropped. There was another figure with her, a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, dressed in a black hoodie, his face partially hidden beneath a baseball cap. His presence sent a wave of dread through me. What was going on? Was Aunt Lucy involved with someone else? I held my breath, trying to listen in, but the wind howled outside, muffling their voices. I had to get closer. Slowly, I crept toward the barn, careful not to make a sound. I could just barely make out what they were saying. "It's almost done." Aunt Lucy's voice was sharp, impatient. "I told you, this will work. We just need to be patient." The man responded, his voice low, but I couldn't catch all of his words. Something about it didn't sit right with me. This wasn't just about Bella. There was something deeper, something sinister. I strained my ears, trying to make out the rest of their conversation. But then, the door to the barn creaked open. I quickly ducked behind a stack of hay bales, praying I wouldn't be seen. I peeked through a small crack, heart racing as Aunt Lucy stepped out, followed closely by the man. They were heading toward the back of the barn, and Bella's panicked whinny echoed again. I couldn't just sit there anymore. My mind was spinning, and everything felt like it was happening too fast. I had to know what was going on, but as I started to stand up and follow them, a voice stopped me dead in my tracks. "You really think you can just stop us?" It was the man's voice, cold and mocking. He'd seen me. I froze, blood running cold. "What do you mean?" I whispered, though my voice shook. Aunt Lucy turned around slowly, her expression hard, like she had been expecting this moment. "I didn't want to have to tell you like this," she said, her tone flat. "But I guess it's time you knew. We're not just taking care of Bella." My heart skipped a beat. What did she mean by that? Taking care of Bella wasn't the problem. It was what she was doing to her. The man stepped closer, a menacing grin on his face. "We've been waiting for the right moment, and now that you're here, you've ruined it." Before I could process what was happening, Aunt Lucy reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black device. I didn't know what it was, but the way she was holding it, with such confidence, sent a chill down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. I was trapped. "We've been working on something bigger than you can imagine," she said, almost whispering, as if trying to make the words more unsettling. "And Bella is just the beginning." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't about Bella at all. Whatever Aunt Lucy and this man were involved in was much darker and much more dangerous than I ever could have imagined. They had a plan, and Bella was just one piece of it. But what did they want from her? And why had they involved me in this twisted game? The stakes had just gone up, and now I was stuck in the middle, with no idea how to get out. My mind raced as Aunt Lucy slowly advanced with the black device in her hand. Her eyes locked on mine. The man beside her was still grinning, a cold, predatory look on his face. I was trapped. My heart pounded in my chest, but I couldn't move, couldn't think clearly. "We didn't want it to come to this," Aunt Lucy said, her voice almost regretful, but her eyes betrayed her. "But you've seen too much. Now you're part of it." Part of it? What was she talking about? My mind screamed for answers, but the only thing that felt real was the sharpness of fear gnawing at my insides. Before I could respond, the man lunged forward, grabbing my wrist with a grip like iron. "This is your fault," he sneered, dragging me toward the barn door. "You should have stayed out of it." But suddenly, Bella's frantic whinnies grew louder. My head snapped toward the paddock, where I could barely make out the shape of her silhouette in the dim light. Something was happening to her, something even worse than I had imagined. "Let go of me!" I shouted, struggling in the man's grasp, but it was no use. Aunt Lucy held the device up, pressing a button that made a low humming sound. I could hear it now, an unnatural buzz that seemed to vibrate through the barn. Bella let out a terrified scream, and my stomach twisted. I had to do something. In a panic, I yanked my arm back with all my strength, and for a split second, the man's grip loosened. Without thinking, I darted for the barn door, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't know what I was planning, but I couldn't just stand there and let them hurt Bella. I reached the paddock just as Aunt Lucy activated the device again, and I saw it. A glowing collar around Bella's neck, pulsing with an eerie blue light. The device was controlling her, torturing her with some kind of signal. I had to get it off. But then something unexpected happened. Bella turned her head and locked eyes with me, her gaze oddly calm. It wasn't the panic I expected. It was almost like she knew what I was about to do. Before I could react, the man suddenly collapsed to the ground, writhing in pain. Aunt Lucy screamed in terror as she looked down at him. "No, not now!"